I used to think routine kept me sane. Same coffee shop, same table by the window, same chipped mug the barista saved for me even though she didn't have to. I'd sit there before work, half listening to the espresso machine hiss, pretending I was busy with emails. Mostly, I was waiting, though I wouldn't have admitted that to anyone, least of all myself. She always came around 8:40. Never earlier, never late. A woman in her 40s, maybe mid. She had the kind of calm that made people lower their voices without realizing it. Hair tied back, silver hoops that caught the light. Sometimes she wore a navy cardigan, sometimes a coat that looked too big for her, maybe borrowed. I didn't know her name then. Just the sound her shoes made when she walked in, a soft, steady rhythm that always seemed to arrive right when my coffee went lukewarm. That morning, she ordered the same thing as usual, black coffee, no sugar. But when she turned to pay, the machine froze. I don't know what possessed me to speak, but I did. Guess it's having one of those mornings too. She smiled, small, polite. Machines have moods, apparently. Yeah, I said, realizing I was still holding my card midair. They take after their owners. That made her laugh, barely. Not loud, just the kind of laugh you hear more in her breath than in sound. She sat 2 tables away. Not close enough to talk, not far enough to forget. She opened a small notebook and started writing in neat, patient lines. Every few minutes, she'd stop and look out the window, not like she was distracted, more like she was searching for something just outside the glass. I pretended to scroll through messages. My dad had sent one at 7:15 that morning. Remember, son, money is everything. Focus. I'd started typing a reply. It's not. But I never sent it. Instead, I kept watching her hand move, the way she paused her pen mid-sentence, how she tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, how she blew on her coffee like it might change its temperature just for her. The bell over the door rang when she left. She passed by my table and stopped for half a second, eyes flicking toward the folded napkin I'd been twisting into a square. You'll wrinkle that, she said, voice light. I didn't look up right away. Bad habit, I muttered. She smiled again, softer this time, and walked out. I thought that would be it. Just another morning, another almost. But when I went to throw away my cup, I saw something on the counter, a receipt with neat handwriting on the back. You forgot your umbrella yesterday. I didn't own one. I turned it over anyway, half smiling before the thought even formed. It wasn't about the umbrella. And somehow I knew, tomorrow at 8:40, I'd be there again. She wasn't there the next morning. Her absence felt louder than her presence ever had, like someone had turned down all the noise in the cafe, but left the silence humming. I sat by the window anyway, folding another napkin into useless shapes. I told myself I wasn't waiting. She came 2 days later. Rainy morning. The kind where shoes squeak on tile, and umbrellas drip small puddles onto the floor. She had no umbrella this time. Her hair was damp, framing her face softer than usual. You remembered, she said, glancing at my table. Routine guy, I said. I'd ruin the world's rhythm if I didn't show up. She smiled, shaking rain from her sleeves. And here I thought I was the only one with superstitions. She sat at the next table again. Close enough that her perfume, something faintly herbal, like mint and cedar, blurred the air between us. For a while, we just drank in parallel silence. She had a paperback open. I pretended to read emails again. Your umbrella, I said finally, nodding at her empty hands. Still missing? She looked up. Oh, that note wasn't meant for you, you know. I figured, I said, pretending to check my phone. But I like thinking it was. Her pen paused midair. A long silence then. It's nice to be thought of, even by mistake. I looked at her then, really looked. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes, the kind that come from more laughter than sadness. Her hands rested around her cup like she was trying to warm something inside herself that coffee couldn't reach. Do you write? I asked, nodding at the notebook beside her. She smiled, guarded. I try. Not very well. What about? Little things, she said. The smell of rain. Strangers in cafes who look like they're waiting for someone. That's specific, I said. She didn't deny it. Over the next week, we kept meeting by accident, or whatever passes for accident when two people start timing their mornings without saying so. She learned I worked part-time while finishing school. I learned she was divorced recently. She never said the word divorced, though, just that she was learning how to be in quiet rooms again. Sometimes I'd help her carry her laptop bag when she left. Sometimes she'd correct my clumsy attempts at humor with a small shake of her head that made me want to try again. One morning, she told me about her son, a year younger than me. He's nothing like you, she said. You listen. I didn't know what to say to that. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It just hung there, like both of us knew it meant something we couldn't afford to name. When she stood to leave, she reached out without thinking and brushed a drop of coffee from my sleeve with her thumb. Sorry, she murmured. It's fine, I said too quickly. Her hand lingered a second longer than it needed to, not long enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for me to feel the tremor of it. After she left, I sat there, watching the steam fade from her cup. I don't know why that moment stayed with me. Maybe because it felt like someone finally saw me. It changed after that touch. Not all at once, just in small, unspoken ways. She'd still smile when she saw me, still order her coffee black, still open that same worn notebook. But she'd sit one table farther away now. A tiny distance, like a line she'd drawn between us. I told myself it was nothing. She probably didn't even realize it. But the next morning, when I arrived and found her seat empty, the thought settled heavier than I wanted to admit. When she finally came in, she looked tired, eyes rimmed in sleeplessness, hair a little undone. She smiled when she saw me, but it didn't reach all the way. You okay? I asked. Just one of those nights, she said. Too many thoughts, not enough quiet. Those are the worst. Or the best, she said, and then caught herself, like she'd revealed something she hadn't meant to. We fell into silence again, each pretending to read. I could feel her trying to stay composed, holding herself still like a photograph. Every so often, she'd glance at me and look away too fast. At one point, my friend Amir walked in, loud as always, all grin and noise. He clapped me on the back hard enough to shake my cup. Bro! You still on your monk schedule? Every morning here? I laughed, awkward. Yeah. Habit. He looked at her, then at me. Something passed between his eyes and mine, a half question, half warning. I didn't answer it. When he left, she closed her notebook slowly. He's right, you know. You're here too much. I could say the same about you, I said. She didn't smile. I'm old enough to know better. It landed between us like a confession. The next few mornings were quieter. She stopped writing, started watching the rain instead. I caught myself memorizing the sound of her spoon against the cup, how she never stirred long enough for the sugar to dissolve. Once, as she gathered her things, I reached out to steady her notebook that nearly fell off the table. My hand brushed hers, a small, meaningless thing. But she froze. Sorry, I said quickly. It's fine. She didn't pull back immediately, though. Her fingers trembled faintly against mine. A pause, 2 heartbeats, maybe 3. Then she withdrew her hand. You shouldn't. She stopped, eyes flicking away. You shouldn't be so kind. It complicates things. What things? She looked up then, finally, directly. Don't pretend you don't know. Something in her voice was both warning and plea. I wanted to say I know exactly what this is, but my throat closed around it. Instead, I just nodded, pretending to understand less than I did. She exhaled, soft and tired. You should get some sleep, she said, gathering her coat. I don't sleep much lately. Maybe you shouldn't come here tomorrow, she murmured. She left before I could answer. Outside, the rain had stopped, but her reflection lingered faintly in the window, the ghost of someone leaving and staying at the same time. For a second, I thought I saw her hesitate at the corner, half turning back, and then she was gone. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. We hadn't crossed the line. Not yet. But I could feel the air thinning around it. A week passed before I saw her again. Longest week I can remember. The cafe felt wrong without her, too bright, too full of voices that didn't fit. I'd started leaving earlier, walking aimlessly after work, half hoping to bump into her somewhere that wasn't here. Then one evening I did. It was almost sunset. She was sitting alone on a bench near the river, coat buttoned, hands tucked into her sleeves. The light hit the water in a way that made everything look quieter than it was. I almost turned back. Then she looked up. "You're following me now?" she said, but the edge in her voice was softened by something like relief. "Coincidence," I said. "Or bad timing. Depends who you ask." I sat beside her. The wood was cold beneath us. For a while, either of us said anything. Just the sound of the river and the faint hum of traffic from the bridge above. "You didn't come back," I said finally. She stared ahead. "I told you not to. I didn't listen. That's the problem." Her tone wasn't sharp, just tired. Like someone trying to reason with a feeling that had already made up its mind. "I keep thinking," I said, "that maybe I said something wrong. Or wanted something I shouldn't." She turned her head, eyes steady. "You didn't say anything wrong." "Then why?" "Because it's not fair." The wind carried her words off before I could catch them. "Not fair to who?" "To anyone," she said. "You're young. You think this means something clear. But people my age, we don't get clean emotions anymore. Everything's half compromise." "I'm not asking for anything," I said quietly. "You should." She gave a small, shaky laugh. "You should be asking for someone who can meet you halfway, not someone who's still trying to forget how to be held." The honesty in her voice hit harder than I expected. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to be afraid, that I wasn't here out of pity, or rebellion, or confusion. But words felt clumsy. So I just sat there, watching her watch the water. After a long silence, she said, "My ex-husband used to sit here with me. He'd talk about stocks and real estate while I pretended to care. I think that's when I started writing again, to hear a different voice in the room." I didn't say anything. Just listened. Her hand rested on the bench between us, not close enough to touch, not far enough to ignore. My fingers twitched once, almost reaching. She noticed. Her breath caught, a small sound, but it filled the space like a confession. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't make me forget what's right." "I wasn't going to," I said, though we both knew I already had. She turned toward me then, eyes glassy in the fading light, the kind of look that says I wish we met at a better time. The distance between us felt like it could break. And then she asked, barely audible, barely brave, "Would you still come back tomorrow if I didn't?" I didn't answer. Maybe I didn't need to. She didn't come back. Not the next day. Not the one after. The barista stopped saving her mug after the third morning. I still sat by the window, same time, same coffee. But the space 2 tables away, the one that used to hold her notebook, her half-finished cup, her quiet, stayed empty. I told myself it was fine. People leave cafes all the time. But my body didn't believe me. I'd catch myself glancing up at every soft footstep, every flash of a navy sleeve. Nothing. Just strangers. One afternoon I finally asked. "The woman who used to sit there," I said. "Short hair, silver hoops, did she say anything before she stopped coming?" The barista shrugged. "I think she mentioned moving. Something about going back to her sister's for a while." Moving. It sounded temporary, but final. I walked home slower that day, taking the long route past the river. The same bench sat empty, wet from the drizzle. I thought about the question she'd asked me, "Would you still come back tomorrow, if I didn't?" Apparently I would. A week later I saw her, by accident again. Grocery store, late evening. She looked different. Hair shorter, expression harder to read. She smiled when she saw me, but it wasn't the same kind of smile. I thought you moved, I said. I did. Just for a bit. Needed to take care of some things. Like what? She hesitated. My son. He dropped out of college. Came home. Oh. She laughed softly, tired, not amused. He's still figuring things out. We both are. We stood in the aisle, pretending to compare two brands of tea we didn't need. It felt absurd. Two people who once lived entire mornings in silence, now fumbling over prices and polite small talk. I wanted to ask her if she'd miss me. I wanted her to ask me why I still came to that cafe. Neither of us did. When she reached for the top shelf, a box slipped and hit the floor. I bent down at the same time she did. Our hands met again, too brief to mean anything, too familiar to mean nothing. She straightened up, clearing her throat. You should stop waiting, you know. It's not healthy. Who says I'm waiting? Her eyes softened. Because I was. That stopped me. Before I could speak, her phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. The faintest smile flickered across her face. My son, she said. He wants me to pick him up. She placed the box of tea back on the shelf. Take care of yourself, okay? Then she was gone again, just like that. No promise, no goodbye. I walked home under streetlights that buzzed faintly, rain misting the pavement. My phone sat heavy in my pocket. I opened our old text thread, the one that had never really begun, and typed something. I saw you today. You looked okay. I'm glad. Then I deleted it. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. The cursor blinked at me, waiting for a word I didn't have. It was evening when she came back. Weeks had passed, long enough for me to convince myself she wouldn't. I was locking up the small bookstore where I worked when I saw her standing by the door, rain in her hair, one hand tucked in her coat pocket like she'd been there for a while. I almost didn't come, she said. I almost didn't hope you would. A small smile. That sounds like us. We stood there in the narrow glow of the shop's window lights. She looked older somehow, not in years, but in wear. The kind of tired that comes from holding too many feelings that don't fit anywhere. Do you want to come in? I asked. She nodded, brushing raindrops from her sleeves. Inside, the air smelled like paper and quiet. I flicked on the lamp behind the counter, soft light, enough to make the space feel like its own small world. She walked to the fiction section and trailed her fingers along the spines. You still working here? Still pretending it's temporary, I said. She smiled faintly. You always were better at pretending. We let the silence sit for a while. It wasn't uncomfortable, just fragile. I shouldn't have left the way I did, she said finally. I knew you would. Still, she said, looking down, you didn't deserve to be one of my unfinished things. I leaned against the counter. We're all someone's unfinished thing. That made her laugh quietly, the first real sound between us in months. I kept thinking, she said, that if I saw you again, I'd explain everything. Why I stopped coming. Why I couldn't just. She stopped, searching for a word she wouldn't say. Because it wasn't just about coffee, I said. Her eyes met mine. No. It wasn't. For a long moment, that truth just existed between us. No excuses, no denials. Just a faint sound of rain tapping against the window, like the world was trying not to listen in. You remind me, she said, voice quieter now, of what I used to feel before life got practical. And you remind me what it looks like when someone survives that. Her gaze softened, wet around the edges. You shouldn't carry other people's survival, you know. Too late, I said. She stepped closer then, not much, but enough for me to smell the faint mint and cedar scent again. My chest tightened with every inch she closed. I thought about writing you, she whispered. A letter, maybe. But everything I wanted to say sounded wrong. Say one thing right then. She hesitated, eyes searching mine for permission or forgiveness or both. You were the first person in years who made me feel kind. Not wanted. Not desired. Just seen. The words landed gently, like something meant to stay. I could have said something back, something about how she'd filled every quiet part of my day without ever trying. But instead, I just reached out, fingertips brushing the sleeve of her coat. Her hand covered mine. Warm. Trembling. Okay, she whispered. And somehow, that was enough. No kiss. No promise. Just a shared breath, 2 hands touching in the soft yellow light, and the feeling that we'd both finally said what needed to be said, without ever really saying it. It's strange how life smooths itself out after the storm, not perfectly, just enough to make you think it was always meant to be this way. Months passed. Seasons turned quietly, like pages no one was in a hurry to read. The cafe still smelled of burnt toast and too strong espresso. But the barista had stopped saving mugs now. People came and went, stories started and ended. And yet, somehow we stayed. She didn't come every morning anymore. Sometimes once a week, sometimes less. Sometimes she'd already be sitting there when I arrived, her coat folded neatly on the chair beside her. Other times I'd walk in to find her looking up from her notebook, like she'd known exactly when I'd show. 8:47 a.m., that accidental rhythm we'd fallen into without meaning to. She still took her coffee black. I still pretended to read while really just watching her. But the quiet between us had changed, no longer full of questions, just soft recognition. We'd talk now, about small things. Her son started night classes again. I found a better job at the bookstore's publishing office. She'd ask about the new authors, I'd ask if she was still writing. She'd say, "A little," with that faint smile that meant, "a lot." One morning she slid a thermos across the table. "You always complain about the coffee here," she said. I opened it, black coffee, but it smelled richer, smoother. "This is dangerous. You'll ruin the routine." She tilted her head. Maybe it needed ruining. We sat like that for a while, trading sips, letting the world go on without us. Sometimes I'd walk her home afterward. Never far, just down to the corner where the road split, one path toward her street, one toward mine. We'd stop there every time, saying nothing, both pretending the goodbye didn't feel heavier than it should. One morning, as we reached the corner, she stopped walking. "Do you ever think about that first day?" she asked. "The one with the broken card machine?" She nodded. "You said machines take after their owners?" "Still true," I said. "I've been out of order ever since." She laughed, quiet, real, full of air. The sound filled the space like sunlight through blinds. For a long moment, we stood there, just smiling at each other, like the years between us had never mattered, like maybe they never did. She reached out, brushing a raindrop off my sleeve, same as before. But this time, she didn't pull her hand away. We didn't say anything. We didn't need to. Sometimes now, when I'm opening the bookstore in the morning, I catch her reflection in the window before she walks in. She still comes at 8:47. Still orders black coffee. Still writes in that same notebook. And when our eyes meet, just before she sits down, she always gives me that small, knowing smile, the one that says, "We built this quietly." I guess she was right all along. Money doesn't build a home. Love does. The quiet kind. The kind that stays. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?